Some of my saner friends have asked me why I still bother playing Skyrim, and what I've said is this. Bethesda are not particularly good at what they do, but almost nobody else ever seems to even try. The story of Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red tell us why that is. Cyberpunk has attempted to resuscitate its hype cycle, which it itself smothered to death, with news of an expansion pack, Phantom Liberty. An appropriate title. Beholding this accursed game, I find my dreams tormented by a specter, the ghost of an industry dying even as it expands. See, I made the mistake of allowing myself to become excited about this game a few years ago, so every so often YouTube will clog up my recommended feed with videos singing the praises of some new mod or other that purports to fix Cyberpunk in some capacity, adding this or that feature that was promised and not delivered. But fixing Cyberpunk 2077 isn't possible, because it isn't really broken in the sense a mod focused on missing features would imply. It simply is not and never was what it purported to be, an actual role-playing game. Nothing on the scale of a Nexus mod or an expansion pack is going to change that. This brings me to the reason I started this whole video with Bethesda. If you don't know, Bethesda Softworks is a studio/publisher who used to make RPGs, but have since pivoted to the much more lucrative industry of re-releasing Skyrim approximately twice a week. The Book of Revelations also predicts they will release Elder Scrolls 6 to break the 7th seal on the Day of Judgment. Oh, and Starfield is a thing too, I guess. If you're sensing hostility, it's because, as a longtime Skyrim addict, what makes the game still worth playing are the mods, many of which are better designed than the game itself, and at least a few of them are basically entire games in their own right. And every time Bethesda updates it, in their infinite wisdom, they manage to break at least a few of the best ones. It might sound odd for me to suggest a game as successful and influential as Skyrim has no true imitators. The industry is choking on a sinful glut of open-world games with RPG elements right now. I mean, CD Projekt Red's most beloved game, The Witcher 3, is similar to Skyrim, right? No. Witcher 3's resemblance to Skyrim is only skin deep, and the fact that so many people compare the two is why Cyberpunk turned out the way it did. It's true that both games can broadly be described as sandboxes where you complete quests, level up, fight monsters, and find magic or rare weapons in absolutely fucking buck-wild places. But what makes that a broad description is that it fails to account for the difference between an elevator pitch and a design document. In some respects, I wish Bethesda games were more similar to Wild Hunt, because it has many elements that I prefer. The combat and quality of writing are frankly operating on a whole other level than Bethesda's usual cavalcade of amateur LARP theater. It's also worth remembering that on release, Witcher 3 worked, like you could play it, and the game engine wouldn't just fucking explode at random intervals. I've spent a frankly concerning amount of time trying to mod Skyrim combat to be more like Witcher combat. If a real alternative to performing open-heart surgery on my game files existed, if I could play a more fully realized game that would scratch this particular itch, I would. That was really all I was hoping Cyberpunk would be. A game which gave me the freedom of Skyrim, or better yet Fallout New Vegas, with a more polished second-to-second gameplay loop. But it fell at the first hurdle. It made the same simple mistake as all the prior pretenders to Skyrim's dubiously claimed throne. Ask yourself this question. Why does V have a voice?
Bingo. Come.
This might seem a small thing. You still choose what V says for the most part, but it's no smaller than invincibility frames in a Souls game, or health regeneration rates in a shooter. Cyberpunk is selling itself as an RPG. You spend most of your time either fighting, walking, or talking. V's voice is a major part of the core gameplay loop. So I want you to really stop and think about why it's there. Start by considering this. From my perspective, the principal difference between Skyrim and Witcher, the one that can't be modded in or out of either game, is that in Witcher you play specifically as Geralt of Rivia, a character who predates even the game itself, and you can't do or say anything that would be out of character for Geralt. You can't slaughter innocent civilians. You can't join any factions. You can't romance anyone long-term besides Triss or Yennefer. In Skyrim, you can name your character the Great Diplomat, make him a lizard person with Technicolor makeup and a fondness for fantasy crack, join a cannibal cult, and then solve every problem you come across by crushing its skull with a warhammer and then eating it. Will the Great Diplomat be as nuanced or human as Geralt? No. He is a cartoonish abomination. but he's still your character, and Geralt is not. My contention is that RPGs are, at their core, about deciding who you are, defining the role that you will play. Anyone who's ever sat down to play a good game of D&D knows the power of that experience, the unique investment you feel for your own creations. If you want an example of how at odds these two models of characterization are, pre-made protagonists versus custom protagonists, look no further than Fallout 4. Fallout 4's attempts at serious storytelling are rendered comedic obscenities by their proximity to Bethesda's usual suite of deranged character options. No matter what else you choose, the protagonist of the game is a parent trying to find and rescue their child. The game's quests and dialogue will continuously reference this motive, no matter what else you do. This is a game where the main character can massacre a family-owned farm with a chainsaw and feast on their corpses minutes before risking life and limb to save their loved one. If you want to play any sort of character who wouldn't be concerned with saving their child, the game will do everything in its power to undermine that characterization, and the tonal dissonance is frequently so extreme as to render the game a masterpiece of unintentional comedy. There isn't much you can do in Fallout 4 that you can't also do in Skyrim, but Skyrim's protagonist doesn't have a voice or any discernible background other than the fact that they were caught crossing a border. The antics you get up to are the only source of characterization you have, and in this case, less is more. All the game had to do was not step on your toes. I think you're starting to see where I'm going with this, right? Just like Fallout 4, Cyberpunk thinks that V needs to be an emotionally complex character in their own right, and in a vain attempt to accomplish this unproductive goal, the script constantly overwrites the player's private characterization of their avatar. Remember, core gameplay loops are the part of games which will be experienced almost constantly. Details, even seemingly small ones, will be scrutinized. The experience of suggesting what a character says and choosing every word are fundamentally different. The Last Dragonborn almost never says anything I as a player do not explicitly tell them to. I don't care if they have any emotional depth, because they are not a vessel of humanity or empathy, they are a tool. Their eyes are windows into the world of fiction, their hands are instruments. They don't experience triumph or defeat or pride or sadness, you do. And to be clear, this isn't a function of the linear elements of the writing being worse in Cyberpunk. If Cyberpunk and Skyrim were both prestige HBO dramas, for example, Cyberpunk would be infinitely better. This is about ludonarrative, about game design structures. None of this is to say you can't create a game with branching choices using a predefined character. That's what Witcher did, to great effect. But Witcher committed to that approach. Effort was made to give Geralt well-defined traits that transcended any player choice, and to ensure that every branch in the narrative was consistent with those traits. Every combination of choices in the Witcher games still results in a recognizable version of Geralt of Rivia. V is a tortured characterization homunculus, not complex enough in their own right to be interesting, but still too well-defined to serve as an effective roleplay vessel. Despite the game asking you up front to pick a backstory for V, all the personal motivation you might have imagined for them is immediately swept aside when the story puts a metaphorical gun to your head, so that V literally has no choice but to pursue the main quest. When I got to this part of the game in my initial playthrough, I immediately began tempering my expectations. I could tell the game and I had different ideas about what role-playing meant. I cannot stress enough how bad of a design choice I think this was. I paid $60 to explore Night City. I am entering this fictional space with an innate curiosity and wanderlust, and now my in-game avatar is motivated by fear and stress. It's like they were actively trying to alienate me from the character. I played through Cyberpunk's entire main story alongside a healthy smattering of side quests. A lot of the writing is strong by the standards of cinema. I kept waiting for the opportunity to assert my own agency, to skip a quest by killing an important NPC in the overworld, to use my character options to access a genuine alternate story branch of respectable length, to simply have a conversation where I got the chance to express my own opinion about something in detail. Even the one choice you make in character creation, to shape V's personality, their life path, is rendered a footnote in the tale of Keanu Silverhand Reeves, who is, to my mind, obviously the character the writers wanted this game to be about. Whenever Keanu takes full control of V's body, it's almost palpable how much more vivid the writing becomes. Johnny Silverhand has a complex backstory, specific mannerisms and demons, a motive that is particular to him. It's almost like we're playing as Geralt again. Now the writers can craft dialogue with genuine rapport. People can comment on your character's past choices and behavior, because now there's a recognizable pattern to the protagonist's behavior. The best writing in this game is almost all linear. It is an interactive media piece that is most comfortable when it is making you sit still. It's no wonder Edgerunners was so much better. So why is the game like this? There's a bit of behind-the-scenes trivia which suggests that CD Projekt were confident in taking on an endeavor as gargantuan as Cyberpunk 2077 because they were riding the high of Witcher 3's monumental success. My instinct is that the creative leadership at CD Projekt Red presumed that if the player cared more about V, they would care more about the story. That approach worked well for them before, after all, but that strikes me as advice suited to a linear medium like literature or cinema. Film lacks the kinesthetic quality of video games. When we witness an event, our emotional engagement takes on a different shape than when we participate in one. There's a whole spectrum of feelings we can only access through direct interaction: pride at a victory hard won, guilt over a mistake, the satisfaction of seeing a plot bear fruit, the totalizing immersion you experience when a game is reactive enough to make you think about the world as if you were actually there. Games are perfectly capable of copying the form and function of cinema. The Last of Us already resembled prestige television before it just up and became prestige television. But role-playing, honest-to-God real role-playing, is an experience only games can deliver. Players will suck it from the bone marrow of games over a decade old. The lack of it in the AAA space is why I still put up with all of Bethesda's crap, and even they don't seem to appreciate how thoroughly they've cornered the market in that respect. I hope Starfield proves me wrong on that front, because it's been a long time since New Vegas, and I'm still not over it. I remember the first time I got a character to the higher levels in that game. I was just wandering the wastes with Boone, this vengeful sniper companion character, and we stumbled across the Legion, a sort of Roman cult faction that had wronged him in the past. He told me, not asked, told me that he was going to go inside and kill their leader. The Legion is a faction with an entire quest line. Their leader is one of the most important characters in the game. Conditioned by Skyrim and Fallout 3, I quick-saved and got ready to slaughter my way through the base, meet an invincible, essential character the game wasn't ready for me to kill, get stuck in an infinite Ulfric is unconscious loop, then reload a save. I was convinced that what was about to happen wouldn't matter. Oh, how delightfully wrong I was. Killing Caesar went on to just become part of the narrative. It didn't get ignored. I hadn't broken the game. I was just in a version of the story where my character killed Caesar, and the game continued. My choice would go on to ripple believably throughout the rest of the plot. It was just a choice the developers predicted that some players might make, so they planned for it. And this is how Fallout New Vegas does everything. New Vegas has a quality that good dungeon masters also have. It never gives you a tool it isn't prepared for you to use. This is a game where you have a gun, so the game's story has contingencies ready for you to shoot just about anyone. There's this lack of invisible walls, a distinction between what you can do mechanically and what would make sense for your character to be able to do in the fiction. It lets you get immersed, it lets you think about the world creatively, like you were navigating a real place and not just running between checklists on a map. What's almost more amazing is that New Vegas was developed over a very short time using the engine of another game. It is, from a tech perspective, an expansion pack, similar in material components to CD Projekt's own Blood and Wine, which makes it a fascinating object lesson in the power of game design, how the same set of tools and assets can be used to construct two wildly different experiences. It was also only possible because the developers didn't have to spend time building the engine, which is why I'm worried we won't see its ilk again for a great while. It was lightning in a bottle, an artistic triumph that stood on the shoulders of AAA grunt work. CD Projekt Red may be the only other studio in the AAA space with the resources and artistic talent to produce a genuine open-world role-playing game, but now it seems like they don't entirely understand the assignment. It's no surprise. Games are a new art form still discovering their grammar. and they're doing so under the yoke of late-stage capitalism, a system obsessed with brute force and expansion for its own sake, lacking appreciation for slow, considered iteration or subtle artistic transformation. The AAA lens of perception doesn't comprehend how giving a character more of something, more backstory, more motivation, more time and money and attention can make that character worse. The opportunity for immersive role-playing is too subtle a thing to fit into a glitzy press release. It isn't some new piece of tech or any one game system. It is an emergent property of play and story being gracefully intertwined. And if a feature doesn't fit into a press release, AAA game publishers might as well not know it exists. So I doubt it's going to get thrown into Cyberpunk by an expansion pack. I hope I'm wrong, but I doubt it. I'm sure someone is going to tell me that I'm being overly critical, and that Cyberpunk 2077 is good, actually. I want to preempt these comments because they add nothing to the discussion. I never said Cyberpunk was bad, nor did I aim to present a thorough review of it as a product or even as a piece of art. What I'm really doing is complaining about false advertising. The game implied it would do something that it didn't. Who else remembers that whole wheat spike concept that floated around before release? On the whole, I don't dislike this game at all. I think it's a well-made sandbox action game, Red Dead 2 with robot arms. It's just not great. It lacks the polish and vision of the games it is inviting comparison to. Hell, I'll probably play Phantom Liberty, but I'll probably play it once, have a good time, and then stop thinking about it. Which is something CD Projekt Red could have accomplished in a lot less time, with a lot less money, and a lot less abusive crunch.